Hey guys, good afternoon. It's November the 11th, 2024, Monday. Bitcoin is ripping, just hit an all-time high, closing in on $86,000, 1.6 or $7 trillion market cap, up from 1.2 just weeks ago. I have Ryan McGinnis in the house today. Ryan has been studying Bitcoin for some years. He'll tell you exactly how long, and also he spends a lot of time on the miners. So I thought I'd bring some alpha to you. Ryan, how you doing, buddy? I know you got to be excited. You do not need those glasses, but I suspect you've made so much money in the last 2 months that the laser eyes would blind me without those. So I appreciate you worrying about my safety. How you doing, buddy?
Mr. Cardone, it's always a pleasure. You know, we've been going back and forth in spaces for some time now, and for me, I'm not the miners guy. I'm very bearish on the miners. I'm a MicroStrategy cat. You know
Excuse me. That's right. But you studied the miners. That kind of led you to the MicroStrategy play, right? I mean, you've looked at the whole. Excuse me. You're totally right, MicroStrategy guy. Which for transparency, I picked some up at 322, maybe a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. So tell me, why don't you tell the audience about how you got here, and then what you're focused on and what you're really excited about in the Bitcoin space?
Sure, yeah. So I became an investor in 2018. Actually, the story starts just a little bit before that. I was getting out of the Army right at 2015, like the point in time with the first Trump presidency. So that was the signal for me. It's like, you got to start, like, time childhood is over, you got to start learning about the world. I then quickly discovered Ron Paul, and I was so on board with his message of like, end the Federal Reserve, stop the wars, all that stuff. And that's what pushed me into being an investor. Luckily, I was able to read the Bitcoin Standard pretty shortly after it came out in 2018. And I was big into Bitcoin and Tesla from that time moving forward. I was in the miners briefly as like trades in the past, just as like a high beta exposure to Bitcoin. But then after the FTX debacle, which what I think is 2022, I think that was like my .com bubble. You know what I mean? Growth stocks getting crushed by 70, 80%. And typically the fraud event puts in the bottom. So that's when I wanted like as much leveraged, like pure play Bitcoin exposure as I could get. So I started buying MicroStrategy on leverage in my brokerage account. I was still working a corporate job at that time. I was buying it. It was 100% of my corporate account. And that's really where the MicroStrategy journey started. Because when I started buying it, it was just that. It was leveraged Bitcoin exposure. Now I think of it as a dominant tech monopoly, and like the early innings of like an Amazon type entity, something that I never want to trade, I never want to sell, and I want to own this thing for forever.
And forever for you is what time period? Is that 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, or?
Great question. Forever for me is my nieces and nephews are going to own this after I'm gone. Like, it's not, if those shares are permanently out of the float, they're not leaving. I do deal in the options market. That way I can have something to realize and either buy myself a house or take care of mom and dad or forgive my sister's like student loan debt. But yeah, the equity's never leaving.
Yeah. And so when you look at MicroStrategy relative to Bitcoin, how do you give me your thesis? What is it about MicroStrategy that excites you more than maybe Bitcoin or a miner?
Well, I love Bitcoin too. I own Bitcoin, especially for that like Ron Paul reason of like end the Fed. I'm also like super bearish on the banks and like the fiat banking system. So I still want to be able to transact in an event where the banks there's massive volatility in the banks. I still want to be able to transact off the network, so I'm not selling that either. But the thing about MicroStrategy, and the thing here is like it's a learning process every single day. Like we keep adding more and more nuggets to the story. I think the biggest nugget actually came very recently. I don't know if you saw the most recent MicroStrategy earnings call a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
To me, that was like a massive light bulb going off type moment where MicroStrategy, the employees, and it's not just Saylor. I get it, he's the quarterback, but you should meet these people. These are wicked smart people who are the financial engineers that stand in between Bitcoin and the equity markets, the bond market, and the options market. And they're just delivering a product that suits every imaginable investor's needs. They're creating it. And it's the best of breed of all those things. MicroStrategy outperformed every single stock in the S&P 500 since, August of 2020 when we started this Bitcoin journey.
Mm-hmm.
The best stock. The bonds, the corporate bonds are outperforming Bitcoin. You know what I mean? And then the options, I mean, people have made a fortune in the options market. So it's just the best of all the different types of asset classes. And it's really they are the financial engineers, right? We can talk about things like Bitcoin yield and how Bitcoin per share goes up. You're not going to get that, of course, in just owning Bitcoin on cold storage. You're just going to have the Bitcoin on cold storage, no Bitcoin yield, no Saylor premium. Bitcoin itself is not going into the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100 or any of those types of things. The FASB fair value accounting, which is going to be Q1 of 2025. Let's look at something like IBIT, right? Just the spot Bitcoin ETF. They're not going to benefit from FASB fair value accounting. MicroStrategy is, and I think it's going to be the largest quarter over quarter change in earnings per share for any public company that I could think of the past 30, 40, 50 years. It's going to be sharp. It's going to be sudden.
The market cap at $222 or $322 today. What's the market cap of MicroStrategy? 60 billion?
We're in the ballpark, 55, 60 billion.
And where do you think it goes?
I think the best comparison that we could look at would be something like Tesla, where, it was just ripping from 2019 to 2020, let's say, just ripping 50 billion, 100 billion. All of this happened before it got into the S&P 500. They were the largest company in terms of market cap to be added at the point of their inclusion at $300 billion. And then the stock over the next year just ripped into, 1.2 trillion at their top in November 2021. I think that's what we're dealing with here. I think it's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars in market cap at the point of inclusion. And that's really just the start. That's not the end, because all of those rebalances that happen months later are going to keep rebalancing higher and higher and higher. And there's obviously a scarcity type element with Bitcoin itself. There's going to be no scarcity type element with MicroStrategy, and that's a benefit, right? We can split the shares. We can sell more shares at the money to investors. So whether it's individual investors like us or nation state central banks or just any type of entity in between, high net worth folks, hedge funds, they will always be able to get their Bitcoin exposure through MicroStrategy.
Yeah. And Saylor bought what, 2,700 Bitcoin this last month in the 70s. I think his average price was 70 and change.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be stopping.
we're not going to stop. And this is one of the many issues that traditional finance folks can't wrap their heads around. They're trying to assign a premium multiple to the net asset value today. What I'm thinking is, we're going to get 1,000,000 Bitcoin. We're going to buy all of it. You know what I mean? That's what the company should be valued on, like the future prospects of what the opportunity is, not how many they have today. It's what they're going to have in the future.
Yeah, I think that's the way you do look at MicroStrategy, almost like a gold. I mean, I think this is why they're saying, hey, this could be like a massive play for a sovereign. Look, if you like Bitcoin, you got to like Saylor and you got to like MicroStrategy's strategy. You know, I think the brilliant thing that he has done is he is arbitraging Bitcoin's optionality up against every instrument inside the legacy banking industry. It's really staggering to see an inverted strategy of, hey, how do I exploit all these gaps between digital and some of the qualities and weaknesses of digital versus qualities and weaknesses of the legacy world. He's most certainly on to something. And he's such a brilliant guy. And I do agree, he's got an awesome team around him. His board is really freaking impressive. And he cleaned his shareholder base up. So he has a shareholder base that is really on board. That you're not going to get in a Chase or a Citibank or an Exxon Mobil or anybody that could pull off a strategy like this. You're not going to get that kind of. Plus, he spent 1.5 years, right, getting everybody up to speed, getting rid of the old shareholders, buying them out. He just did it so well. Do you see any other companies, Ryan, out there that look like they could be a hybrid or a knockoff of MicroStrategy that may not have all the premium already cooked in, even if they can't pull off what Michael has been able to do? They'll be smaller players. I mean, I could see a private company doing this and saving their company if they could get out of their own way. Do you see any? I mean, Similar's trying to do this. They've had a good run, but everything that's touching Bitcoin right now, it's going to have a good run just because. What other companies are doing this, or you think will do this?
Such a great question, and I want to come back to like flipped the concept of an equity on its head and I'll get to that. But to answer this question here, I'm doing this stuff behind the scenes. We're looking to roll up, private companies, and they can be any business. They can sell jeans. They can put roofs on people's houses. It doesn't matter the industry. We're gonna roll them up, take them public, and then I'll be running the treasury and implementing like the MicroStrategy playbook while also trying to help the businesses optimize from a data science perspective. Like, I think so many companies spend way too much money on ads. So I'll be able to do like targeted like data science operations for their marketing. But it's happening at a small scale. And also, like you said, Semler Scientific and MetaPlanet and El Salvador, they're buying Bitcoin. And but the thing that, or I should say, the reason that I think MicroStrategy has a monopoly is nobody's going to be able to catch them. Nobody's ever going to be able to catch them in time and get this much Bitcoin. And the handful of companies that could actually buy 300,000 Bitcoin, let's call it the Mag 7 companies, even if Meta did that, they would still never be able to emulate the MicroStrategy volatility as a product, because the majority of their business would still be off of like their earnings on the Meta, WhatsApp, all that other stuff that they do. The Bitcoin would actually represent like a much smaller portion. but we have now like an equity that's fully built up and set up as a leveraged Bitcoin equity. And the whole, like nearly the entire business value comes from that. And that specifically is what's not, that's impossible, like with certainty, impossible to recreate that. Could Meta buy 300,000 Bitcoin? Maybe. But here's where I'll tie in that other concept of what you said about how he flipped the idea of an equity on its head. Conventional like business school type teachings would say that like cash on the balance sheet is bad. You want to get rid of the cash with either buybacks or paying shareholders a dividend or something. You want to get rid of that balance sheet volatility. MicroStrategy is the exact opposite. We're building the treasury. We want the volatility. We want there to be like major swings in the stock in like the most literal sense, because that's what makes the convertible bonds so valuable. The convertible bonds are the best performing corporate bond out there. They outperform Bitcoin itself. The volatility, again, in the options market, option traders like myself, they want the underlying that's going to move the most, because we can just simply look at the implied volatility over whatever time horizon we're looking at. And if I think the stock's going to go up a lot and the implied volatility is very small, we can like exploit that. You know what I mean? So like the volatility is the product for MicroStrategy in all of the conventional instruments. And we've totally flipped the game on its head. And that's why it's such a like unique, one of a kind type opportunity, in my belief. And none of this is financial advice, obviously. We're just sharing ideas.
Yeah, sure. Well, two investors talking about how they look at their portfolio and what kind of risks they take. And that's all I'm doing. I'm sharing my experience with people, how to make decisions. I have a small allocation of MicroStrategy relative to Bitcoin, and I have, and it's small relative to the miners. I might be wrong on this trade, but I didn't know enough about MicroStrategy until I really started looking at it. I really like Sailor a lot, and I put a lot, especially when I mean, the cool thing about investing in Bitcoin is I don't have to look at any of the people. There are no people for me to worry about. And so then when I go into an equity, most certainly there are very few people in the industry that I would give as much credibility as Sailor, both in the old world and the new world. But you know, there's a couple of guys that run miners that are really smart people, dude. I mean, there's some smart people in this industry. You know, I would build the case actually that there are a couple of miners here that if they actually do this correctly, they will survive this, but they have to do this strategy. The MicroStrategy strategy has to be inside of a Bitcoin or they're not going to survive this. Like I really believe that. You're not going to survive it because you're going to be competing with sovereigns and their input costs are going to be zero. But if you could like supercharge your balance sheet with Bitcoin instead of having all that debt and constantly having to dump the best asset you have, I don't think you make it because you're always on that treadmill. You never get off the treadmill. That's the problem, right? And like literally, I think Sailor's already has escape velocity. It's going to be really like try to go borrow 0.5% money.
You can't.
Like no, but his vault is getting so significant. I had a conversation with somebody that's an old legacy guy. I'm like, bro, he's borrowing money cheaper than you are. He's, well, how's that possible? There must be some super banks out there that think this is a better collateral, or they are so loaded up on all their 6 and 7 and 8% shit, they don't want any more of it. And when I said that to him, he's like, oh my God, dude. I mean, imagine a super bank going to their syndicates going, hey, how much 7%? We don't want any more 7%. It's too risky, dude. Okay, well, I got some at 0.5%, but it has no risk. And they're biting off billions of it. Okay, that tells me, whoa, Citibank's not stupid. They're just taking another piece of the pie at a reduced interest rate, and they're probably trading the shit out of options right behind it. I'm going to say this, and I will say it with great certainty, and it is financial advice. There has never been an entry point at $85,969 for Bitcoin. It has never been a safer point to enter Bitcoin and to do so in size.
Right.
See, that's the piece I think people forget. Oh, Gary, you should have come in at 300. Yeah, bro, I ain't putting $50 million to work at $300. I don't understand Bitcoin. You guys don't understand. You guys hate each other. The Cardano founder hates Bitcoin's founder. Everybody's looking for top. You guys are a bunch of children, dude. Now that the children are out of the way, or at least they're starting to behave like they're adults because they realize, shit, man, Wall Street's going to make us rich. I mean, 4 years ago, dude, people called me the suit. Like, so rude. And I'm like, I'm actually helping you guys, dude. Like, I don't have to be here.
Right.
I'm not poo-pooing on you. I'm actually supporting the heck out of the industry. Why are you guys so scared of everyone? And like, what's happening right now? This is a real market now. This is a real global market. It is never going to not be a global market.
Yeah.
And dude, I have 72-year-old people calling me going, dude, this is big. And they still haven't gotten in. I mean, there are a lot of people that have not. That means there's going to be other MicroStrategies. There's going to be a lot here. It's truly exciting. What we're going to shoot down a little bit. We're going to close up here because I got a little background noise coming in from you. But give the audience like maybe your thoughts on end of the year for Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, and then what happens next Q1. Let's just go out 4 or 5 months.
I've never been good, and I apologize for the noise and all that stuff. We threw this. I thought it was just a phone call, but we'll talk more, of course. We'll talk more, of course. And the look, I've never been good at like predicting short-term stuff. That's why I don't trade like short-term options. So I have no idea where any of these things are going near term, but I just study the catalyst. You know what I mean? We know that the all country world index is going to rebalance higher in 3 weeks. We believe that MSTR will be added to the NASDAQ 100 very shortly after. We then have a historic options expiration on January 17th of 2025, where there are a ton of open interest of call options that are in the money. And there's great reason to believe, and Punter Jeff explained the historic options expiration. There's great reason to believe that many of these people are going to be exercising those options. And if that happens, then it's just going to cause a relentless buying pressure. And then right after that, we have FASB's fair value, which, like I said, I think it's going to be the highest quarter-over-quarter change in earnings in U.S. market history. And then after that,
because they'll book all those earnings on the FASB. They'll just take their average price is 42,000. So you're saying under FASB they'll immediately show a $40,000 profit.
Yeah, you take that $40,000 profit, you multiply it by all the coins that we have, and on a go-forward basis from there, the formula for determining MicroStrategy's earnings per share is going to be so simple. It's going to be the spot price of Bitcoin minus the cost basis divided by all the shares. So that'll start to become more intuitive for some of like the legacy financial folks. And then we've got potentially, after that, MicroStrategy World, that's happening, and then potential inclusion into the S&P 500. So this, and again, all of those MSTR specific catalysts are happening during Bitcoin's peak seasonality in terms of both the halving and the election cycle. Like if you've ever looked at the tops from 2013, 2017, and 2021, they all happened a year after the presidential election of that year. We've got interest rates going lower. We've got global money supply going higher. So like this whole picture, I couldn't paint if I just had a blank canvas. I couldn't paint a better picture if I tried. You know?
Yeah. No, I don't see any headwinds. I had a couple, and they're gone now since Tuesday night. They're most certainly gone. Even Trump being assassinated, and I do think they're going to take another whack at him. We end up with Vance, who will know more about Bitcoin than Trump. So I think on the Bitcoin trade or the Bitcoin industry trade, it's a one-way, way more upside than downside. I can't even see any economic struggles for the next year. I think if you release regulations and you get draconian law people out of the way, this enforcement fascist economy or government, everything's going to fly. Americans love innovation. What we don't like is having cops at every road constantly, sending us a letter going, "Hey, what are you doing?" or "Slow down," or like, we need to break things. Right now, we need to innovate. There's thousands of companies in America that are dead in the water. They're literally just dead in the water.
Yeah.
Like now, see, MicroStrategy. If MicroStrategy goes into the S&P, I mean, I don't know what it takes to become a Mag 7, but man, if that were to happen, this is game over then, right? This is there's $60 billion. I think MicroStrategy is worth 60 or 70 billion today. That is twice the size of Dynegy when we built it. And we had all this equipment and all these power stations and 6,000 people. Man, he doesn't have any of that. It's just mining. He's not even mining anything, right? He's just mining paper into Bitcoin. It's unbelievable.
That's it.
It's awesome. It's exactly what everyone else should do, by the way. They should make fiat, mine fiat, buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Mine fiat, rent everything, including your home. Probably a boyfriend or girlfriend would be better to rent a boyfriend or girlfriend in this cycle and buy Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin and then just keep buying Bitcoin or a surrogate of Bitcoin that's really solid. Hey, Ryan, thank you very much, buddy. Any closing comments? And where do people find you?
Yeah, you can find me Ryquants on Twitter, and let's of course do more of this because there's so much left to unpack. But the one closing thought I want to leave you with is that like 1 minute video that you put out. I'm not sure if you saw. I put a post on about it, like reshared it with a post. It was the video where you said like, "Dude, we're not gonna buy a spot. We're gonna rent a spot, like a real estate like office building. We're just gonna rent it, and we're gonna buy Bitcoin." And that is like.
Oh, that was Greg. Hey, got a really cool location downtown. Cause I was like, hey, I think I can't keep doing this at my house. Hey, got a cool location downtown. Let's go buy it. And I'm like, why the fuck would we buy a building? Dude? Why would you do that? Like people need to stop thinking about buying something they don't own. Like if I'm buy something, dude, I want to own it free and clear. I don't want to have to pay for it later. Anyway, it's going to be really, really exciting ride. Really good to meet you, Ryan. Thank you. I know I've been in spaces with you, but good to like have a proper, just you and I conversation. We will do this again. And thank you for being here and like sticking your neck out. And it looks like you might make a little money here, buddy. So well done on you.
Well, thank you, sir. It's a privilege just to be able to talk to you. I'll follow up with Samuel, and I'm looking forward to talking more, an even more proper conversation when I'm in my office area.
No, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Thank you very much. You guys follow Ryan. You can get him on Spaces. I'm sure he's on LinkedIn. He's a good guy, and he's done a lot of homework. So thanks again, Ryan. Have a good lunch, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Take care.